Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Welcome to episode 38 of the Fly Route Podcast. I am your host, Anthony, aka Tony Playboy, and I am joined here by some of my nearest and dearest friends today. First, as always, DeMarcus, aka Shaq's free throw form. You got any AKAs for yourself today, DeMarcus?
AKA Ice Trey. Trey Young's gonna shut it down in the garden. He's gonna do that all over again.
All right, and we are also joined here by our very first guest, Phil D. How you doing?
Good. God, I hate Trey.
You sound
Young.
excited.
Well, DeMarcus' comment threw me off, man. I can't stand Trey Young. I hate him. I hate Paul George. No,
he's better than Paul George.
Whoa.
His hair certainly is not. That hair is foul.
I won't defend his
hair.
Look, we have an exciting show for you all today. We are going to get into some of the Jay Cutler divorce drama and how he is standing up for men all around the world. We are going to dig into the recent race norming settlement in the NFL and talk about its implications going forward for the league. We are going to give you our takeaways from the NBA playoffs so far, the RPO, Run Pass Options segment, where we give you the hottest storylines in sports news for the week and let you know whether we are going to run with them or pass on them, give you our predictions for all the teams in the NFC West this year, and last but not least, give a big ballers bouquet to Big Diesel himself, Shaquille O'Neal. Welcome to the Tee-Off.
Ooh, spill that tea, sis.
This is how we like to start our show off. We like to spill some tea on our favorite athletes and some of the crazy situations they get themselves into. Today we are joined by Phil D. You want to introduce yourself, let people know about you?
Yeah, my name is Philip Samuels. I went to the University of Kansas, which is why you see me with always repping the University of Kansas, Jayhawk for life. And beyond that, I'm an avid sports fan, write about sports, think about sports all the time. It's really an integral part of my academic pursuits.
Fantastic. So I'm going to give you a little option. Do you want to start with the heavy shit or the funny shit?
Let's start with the funny shit.
All right, fantastic. Funny shit. We are going to talk about Chicago Bears quarterback. Some would say, one of the better quarterbacks that we have ever had in the history of our team, Jay Cutler. And he is going through a quite messy divorce with, I don't know if any of you are familiar with this woman, Kristen Cavallari. Right, she was on a bunch of TV shows, reality TV shows in early 2000s, such as The Hills, etc.
That's the one that made her famous, was The Hills.
Yes, it is. And after about 7 years of being married, a decade being together, and 3 children, her and Jay Cutler are getting divorced. She has accused him of inappropriate marital conduct in her divorce filing and has said that they have irreconcilable differences. All right, this is regular, normal stuff, but how does this become interesting? I want to tell you. She starts off the divorce proceedings. First off, she wants full custody of the kids, not joint custody. She also then wants about $5 million to purchase a home, which she then... Oh, okay, Phil, your face is already fantastic. Please tell me what's on your mind.
I read this story. She wanted money. She wants an alimony. She wants it all.
Okay, so as far as I am knowledgeable on this, she doesn't really have much access to any of Jay Cutler's funds. There's a prenup for Jay Cutler in this situation, but not for Kristen Cavallari. So she's just he was okay with me getting a new home before we split up. Now that we're split up, he is punishing me. This is a quote from This is a quote from her filing, punishing me financially by not allowing me to buy this new house.
Well, if you're getting a divorce, he's no longer responsible for her financially. That's not a punishment. You on your own.
Look, she says she's being punished financially and that he also will not leave their house in Tennessee. So there is nothing that she can do.
So you tell me he won't leave his house.
He said he won't leave his house. And he says they also have 2 multi-million-dollar homes in Tennessee. And why can't she just pick up and go to the fucking other one? I shit you not. But this is where it becomes a little bit more interesting. Jay Cutler, after about months of this going on, months of him saying that he wants joint custody with her kids, she is saying no. Months of her saying he needs to leave their home because he cannot be in the same home as her and their children, or it is detrimental to their upbringing. Jay Cutler pulls the ultimate chess move of all time and then asks for half of Kristen Cavallari's very successful jewelry and apparel company, Uncommon James. He believes he deserves half of the company because she started the company while they were married and built it while they were married. It became successful through their marriage way before they filed for divorce. Now she's like, what?
I mean, arguably, she's more famous because of Jay Cutler.
Hey, look,
that's why
that is also why I know her too, but I don't think we're her target demographic here.
No. But you can't tell me he didn't add to her brand. You can't tell me that some guy didn't hear about Jay Cutler's wife's jewelry brand and buy his wife some jewelry.
Maybe not. Phil, what do you think about this?
I mean,
so Jay,
I think it just goes to prove that things aren't what they used to be. The old gray mare, it just ain't what it used to be. Used to be when women asked, they got everything they asked for. And in this instance, they're not only not getting what they're asked for, they're getting a bunch of what they didn't ask for. And in this instance, that's half. He wants half. She didn't ask for that. She wanted $5 million to buy a house. And she got a response with, yeah, I'll give you $5 million to buy a house with your own money because I want half. Also, I read somewhere that a few months ago, he cut her off completely. Shut down. Because they did have some joint monies. He shut all that down, took all that away, shut it all down. Which is why she's now like, I need $5 million of that money to buy a house. And he's like, kick rocks.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If you thought she was going to buy a house with the joint money and you just cleared it all.
That's what he did. That's what I read.
Oh, that is so sad. Jay Cutler is kind of a king.
Like, I don't know who she thought she was getting, but the person he is this moment is not who she thought she was dealing with. Because he is. If he played quarterback with this much aggression, he'd be a Hall of Famer. He'd still be in the league.
Oh, that is hilarious because that is like the main critique of Jay Cutler is that he was just apathetic about everything and was impossible to lead people.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to really know is what is the inappropriate marital conduct that she refers to?
Would not. So from everything I've read, she will not explicitly say that it is cheating, but that it was detrimental and created irreconcilable differences between the two of them, and that she no longer feels safe being around him, hence needing another $5 million home instead of either their home in LA, their other home in Tennessee, etc.
I mean, maybe it was when he forced her, and I use that term loosely, to go on a trip during the height of the COVID.
Oh, when they went to the Bahamas?
Mm-hmm. Wasn't that them?
It was them. Mm-hmm. It was them. Did he force her to go to the Bahamas? Because I know as soon as they came back,
he did not.
They got divorced.
I mean, that probably couldn't have helped her brand. Couldn't have helped. I mean, it certainly didn't help her brand because they were getting it all over the media. The media was just giving them every last bit of it, calling them irresponsible, calling them all kinds of things. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how this works itself out because they're both rich. And at the end of the day, they don't need each other's money. But it'll be interesting to see how the courts come down and who they decide to give the money to. Like, she's not getting any of his money if they had a prenup. The only real question is if he's going to get any of her money.
Yeah, that is going to be some savage shit.
It's going to be the best.
Football players have loved this. They are all over Twitter. Like Darius Slay is like, Jay Cutler is showing us all the way. Ryan Clark said that Jay Cutler is setting a new trend for kings.
Sounds a little Hotep. Okay.
Yo, if Hoteps were this ingenious with their strategies, there'd be more of them. Niggas are lining up for the Jay Cutler special right now. So let's pivot on into something that's a little bit more heavier, but I think it's very important, something that we want to talk about and needs some attention. And I'm really happy that I have someone like Phil here today, because your time span for understanding sports in particular is a lot longer than both me and DeMarcus's. And you never let me live that one down when we're arguing sports. So let's start. So there's about a $1 billion settlement that has just been negotiated between the NFL and retired NFL players, in which the league used a scoring system, and the term people have been using to describe this is race norming, in which it justified paying out black players less money, or in some instances, no money at all, when they suffered from dementia or severe brain injuries, period, in comparison to their white counterparts. They use a scoring algorithm, and that scoring algorithm just uniquely decided that black men start with a lower cognitive ability than their white counterparts, so thus they had not degraded enough in cognitive ability to receive payouts, whereas white players started with a base higher cognitive ability, so they were more likely to get their payouts in a ton of situations. This petition had 50,000 plus signatures. It was something that took a ton of red tape for them to get across. They had to prove in multiple instances that multiple players, over a vast amount, like 20,000 players, with the majority of them, because the majority of the league is black, would have received payouts that did not if they were assumed to be white based off the NFL's algorithm.
I mean,
let me hear what you got to say.
You also don't mention here, which I think is important, that when some of these claims were brought and then denied, and then black players sued the league and the fund and the lawyer in charge of the league, the fund, the NFL went to the sticks with this. Like, they really were trying to deny these men their just due into perpetuity based on what is functionally phrenology. These neuropsychologists came in and they were like, well, black people's heads aren't as big, so they can't have as big of brains. Therefore, they can't have as much cognitive degradation as the white players. What are you even fucking talking about at this point? Like, reading
this
the
is
stories,
Darwinism.
What?
This is Darwinism.
Yeah, it's phrenology, man. It's like, it's that same old biological determinism that has been used since the beginning of time to say that black people aren't as smart as white people. And every so often, every 20, 30 years, it crops itself up. But this is the same justification they used in many instances to deny blacks the ability to play quarterback in the league. They were just like, oh, well, they'll be smart enough to read defenses. They'll be smart enough to be a quarterback. How could they be a quarterback? These little brains they got. And this shit is right in the NFL. It runs through almost every single segment of the NFL. So it's really no surprise to see it crop up in the payouts of, for CTE. It's zero surprise to see that. Now that they've been outed, though, the NFL came out and gave an apology. I don't know if you saw that. Their apology was kind of BS. It's like, they were like, oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, they were like, we're sorry if we hurt anybody or anybody's family. Thoughts and prayers.
That's not really wrong. And they even went as far to say these systems that we created and put in place were actually supposed to solve these problems, not create them in the first place.
Well, I mean, that's some Supreme Court logic. We'll solve racism by being racist. So the most racist we can be, we will solve racism in this way. So, I mean, it's that logic is prevalent when trying to figure things out legally. It makes sense to legal scholars as well as the lawyers, and it gets implemented in so many instances, and it just denies Black people the same recompense that they would give to any white person.
Well, I mean, when I first saw this, I was kind of shocked it was still happening. Because the NFL's had a lot of attention on concussions, on CTE, on brain trauma. There's been movies made about it, other lawsuits with players to set up this fund, I believe, in the first place, or a fund to pay out for injured, retired players, etc. And so I would imagine that it has to go back at least a little bit. I can't imagine the NFL just started during all of that to do the race norming.
No, 1990s is when they started this system. So it's been going on for literally 30 plus years.
Well, I mean, for years, you have to understand, for years, they denied that there was a concussion problem. So
yeah,
the fact that when they finally got sued and it was proven that there was a concussion problem, there was an overwhelming amount of evidence. It's zero surprise that they did the best that they could in order to save as much money as they could. I mean, this is the definition of capitalism meets racism.
I mean, I think of the NFL as no different than big tobacco or big oil when it came to, fervently defending that.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right. And, the NFL, they aren't going to change their argument right now is they'll get rid of the system. But right now, there's no other system in place for them to replace it with.
They are creating a new one.
They're like, there's no ready system. So until we get a new one, this is what we got. But
they tried that. The settlement did not allow them to do it. On Wednesday, literally on June 2nd. Like on June 2nd, they stopped using the system. Like they did not, 7 days from when we are currently recording is the day the NFL pledged to stop using the system. The NFL said they got a panel of neuropsychologists that are supposed to create a new system that includes 2 women and 3 Black doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And they say that the replacement norms they create will be applied prospectively and retroactively. So all players that were denied prior to this will then receive their hopefully just due.
I mean, we'll see.
I mean, in my opinion, the only real way to get rid of the problem here is to when the NFL player files for this, you strip away the name and the race and you make them a random number. And that's how they're
a double blind system.
That's the only way to do.
I mean,
okay.
It has been common knowledge for a very long time that of all of the professional leagues, the NFL is by far the worst at dealing with the people who are no longer in the league. The people who have retired from the league, they let them degenerate to nothing, and then they take zero responsibility for the impact that the game took on their body. And they just have let them for years, before even the concussion things came to light, for years just degenerate. This has been a story, how they treat the former NFL players since I can remember, and I'm pretty old. So it's just another part of a long link chain of where they have discarded the gladiators who played and don't worry about any of that, especially since most of them were Black. They just didn't care.
But the NFL, that's what they have been for their entire existence, as a bunch of rich white men. And so I don't think that we can say that white people have changed very much this past year, and this country has taught us a whole lot, or exposed a whole lot to some people at least, that this is the way things are. And a
lot of people will listen to this and they'll say, keep race out of sports. They'll say, why are you making these things about race? They'll say these things are so long ago. The NFL created this system in the 90s. And this system has been systematically preventing Black players, which the majority of the league is Black, from getting cognitive payouts from the dementia, CTE, etc., that comes from playing the game.
It would be funny to hear someone say about this particular issue to keep race out of sports in a world where the league named it race norming, not us. Their psychologists, their neuropsychologists named it race norming. So we had nothing to do with it.
It was always already about
We
it.
had nothing. I love that.
I
love that. Okay. On that note, that was your tee off.
Ooh, spill that tea, sis. Spill that tea, sis. Y'all is Tony Playboy.
All right, let's get into our takeaways from the first round of the NBA playoffs. DeMarcus, we've seen a lot. They haven't heard from us in a week, but we have the culmination of the first round completely. And I want to know your main takeaways. Let's start with the Bucks versus the Heat. Series ended 4-0, clean sweep for the Bucks. What was your biggest takeaway?
Biggest takeaway was that the Bucks tweaks in the regular season and changes with trades, etc., helped them a ton. But with the time that's passed between the first round ending and the second round starting, it's now looking more and more like the Miami Heat just weren't the team they were last year, and Milwaukee was who they've always been. And right now, and well, I'll say that for a second, but I'll say right now, Milwaukee does not look as great. Takeaway from the Heat series was that they kind of vanquished their demons, and they looked really good. The Bucks did.
Okay, I'm with you. I am definitely with you. I felt like the Heat aren't who we wanted to believe they were. Losing players like Jay Crowder, Kelly Olynyk, etc. actually impacted them a lot more than we thought they would. Mm-hmm. And they might need to reevaluate some of their bubble superstars like Tyler Hero. Because this team... Oh, what's up?
Well, those are young players. They are going to be inconsistent sometimes and have ups and downs. And I think that's what happened this year, is that you couldn't recreate the conditions of the bubble. There were all the distractions. And so maybe they weren't as locked in as they were last year this time.
Okay, I'm with you. Let's move on to the Knicks versus the Hawks. I'm pretty sure this one ended in 5-4-1 for the Hawks. I mean, you were right about this one, that the Hawks would win. What was your biggest takeaways?
Trae Young is a lot better than I think a lot of us have given him credit for thus far. Having him play on national TV games, in the Garden, etc., really showed a lot of people what he is about. Now, he's hot and cold. He has his streaks. But when he is on, and he can be a superstar. And, the memes that came out this weekend were that, maybe the Hawks didn't lose the Luka Trae Young trade as bad as we think they did.
That actually might be true. That was one of my key takeaways. It made the trade look less bad. I'm not going to say it made it look good, but it definitely looks way less bad.
No, that's all I got from that. I think, like I said, a few weeks back, I'm not really sure if Julius Randle is a 1. I think this playoff series gives New York that clarity now instead of later, which is good for them moving forward.
I'm not willing to say like Julius Randle has peaked yet, man. The jump between his game from last season to this season was so large that I am kind of confident that he will solve a lot of the issues the Hawks presented him coming back next year. But my big takeaway was, man, Nate McMillan is kind of that guy. And he has changed this Hawks team aggressively. He's made Trae less of a long distance shooter all the time and definitely more of a facilitate first. You can get your shot anytime you want type of point guard. And because Trae Young is that special, that has kind of energized this whole team. And more importantly, we saw this Hawks team play really good defense in the first round. And that is not something that was their calling card at all prior to Nate McMillan kind of putting his stamp and his imprint on this team. So I'm looking forward to seeing him re-up and get a quite long contract coming up. Let's go down to Wizards versus the Sixers. Also went 4-1 for the Sixers. What do you have here?
Nothing surprising here. The Sixers did what I think they were supposed to do. The Wizards put up a fight. I think the storylines emanating from this game are bigger than this series itself. the storyline about the fans and Russ and Joel Embiid's injury, etc., are bigger stories than this series ever was. So I don't have any takeaways except for it was a bit of a snoozer. This happens sometimes in the first round where one team's just a whole lot better, and this is one of the ones we knew going in was going to be like that.
Yeah, my only takeaway was free Bradley Beal. Like, Russ and Bradley Beal can clearly play together well and have a decent relationship and partnership, but the ceiling for this team is very low.
This is the ceiling.
Okay. Last but not least, on the East, the Nets versus the Celtics. What did you take away from this one?
The Nets, I'll say this. I think I had the same expectation of the Nets coming out of this series as I did going in, which is what I told you a couple weeks back, which is without one of their stars, James Harden, they can still look really good, but he is the piece that elevates them to the next level. They took care of the Celtics without much help from him, really. Kyrie and KD did amazing things. People are back on the KD's the best player train. I don't know why they ever got off. If
everybody wanted to say we got to see how he comes back from his Achilles injury.
Yes. I still want to see the team in the Eastern Conference Finals, and when it's tough, can they get over the hump? Do they all gel and come together? Do they decide kind of and agree on who takes the last shot, etc.? But as this first round series, there's nothing surprising about it. The Celtics were shorthanded. They didn't have Jaylen Brown. And so I thought the Nets were going to win. They just had more firepower. And that's what happened. Of course, Jason Tatum showed out a couple times.
Dude, that was my takeaway. Jason Tatum is objectively disgusting.
Yeah, one thing I'll say is I still don't get why people don't think he's a superstar. I think he has done it enough in the playoffs already to say that he's a superstar.
I will say that the only other thing that I took away from this is I don't think Kemba and the Celtics will work. I don't think it's going to be a working relationship for them. His
body's failing him.
His body is failing him, but also even when he seemed like he was kind of healthy, he just didn't seem to be in groove or in rhythm with what the team needed from him. Like, he's not really distributing the ball the most or first, or even as effectively as Gordon Hayward did for them last season, but he's also at best the third scoring option on that team. So then what do we really expect from Kemba to be successful in the current construction of this Boston team? And I just think it's a bad match for both of them.
No, we'll see what President of Operations Brad Stevens does here in a few weeks. But, he says he knows what holes they have and he's going to fix them. And I hope that is the case because I think the NBA is better when the Celtics are a good team.
I agree. And the Celtics shift is definitely something I want to get into later on this podcast. So the West first round playoffs. I'm going to start with the juiciest one, the best one, the one to win 7 games. Clippers versus Mavs, 4-3 for the Clippers. All right, DeMarcus. I ended up being right about this series, although it was way closer than I would have imagined.
Even in Game 7.
Period. Just like period. What was your big takeaway?
KP's not that guy. I was on the fence part through the season because he had last year sustained stretches of playing really well. He had come back and was working his way back from an injury, and so we're giving him a little bit of benefit of the doubt. And I said I wanted to see the rest of the season and how it played out and to see what his potential could be. And when the season was over, I was done with him. I thought less of him than I did even before. I thought that he failed to show up. He said that he was an afterthought in the offense. There are some possible rumors that he has said that he has made comments about Luka, and there's now is KP jealous of Luka? And all I got to say is, yeah, he's an afterthought. He shot 30% from 3, and he's a big man shooting like 6 threes a game. Get down on the block. You are an afterthought because you're not doing your job. You're not a unicorn. That's not your nickname no more. You lost it.
All right, I will say that I agree with you. I don't think KP is that guy for them. And as far as money situations goes, if anything about KP's contract makes you have to think twice about Tim Hardaway Jr., he needs to go. Because Tim Hardaway Jr. was a dog. He showed up big time for them. And something that I really, really, really have been saying all year long, and now I think is proven, they really missed Seth Curry this year. And Josh Richardson was not a good enough replacement.
Not consistent in the big moments, and Seth can be. He's been there before. They really needed him. What I was really also surprised by was how Kawhi showed up in some of the big moments down the stretch in that series. There were times where Kawhi took over games where he decided that he was going to be the one who scored. And down the stretch in Game 7, times where he was guarding Luka one-on-one. Now, of course, by that point, I would argue Luka was very tired and also hurt. And so that's why I don't think it would matter who was guarding him that much. He was missing all his shots. But Kawhi did take on that responsibility late in the series and on both ends of the court.
I actually think we're going to see Kawhi lock in late in the series now if he has to defensively. I don't think he's going to start series defending the other team's best player and burning himself out early, because stamina and endurance and just health is always the big question mark with Kawhi now. And I think that Ty Lue is a better coach than people are giving him credit for. I think we saw him make some big adjustments in this series, such as Luke Kennard going from like back-to-back DNPs to getting big minutes, Rondo losing all his minutes for Reggie Jackson in like heavy doses, right?
Well, that was a difference in Game 7. Reggie Jackson, the Clippers role players and their bench, they got the most out of them, and the Mavericks got nothing out of their role players and their bench. I think at one point in Game 7, it was like the Clippers bench had scored 25 points and the Mavericks had scored 4. And so that's no help at all for Luka. Not to mention his people who are out there who hit him as starters like KP also aren't hitting. People who were hitting their shots like role players of Dorian Finney-Smith and Tim Hardaway Jr. And Bronson. They also were not hitting the shots they normally make. The role players shrunk, and the other star shrunk. And Rick Carlisle also should have done more double teams on Kawhi late down the stretch in this series, because Kawhi was dominating on offense. And so, Rick Carlisle is a great coach, but in this particular instance on that issue, he got outcoached.
Did you hear him say that he actually had KP out there for spacing? Like he wanted Porzingis to space, not be on the block, not be posting people up.
That makes sense when Boban's out there, but when KP is the only one out there and the Clippers are small, you have to take advantage of your size on the block. You cannot let them get second chance points off of rebounds, and you also can't not just get easy buckets. KP had like 8 points and 6 points in some of these games this series. And for a guy that's that big, that's supposed to be that good, who gets paid that much, you have to play better than that.
Okay, I'm with you.
Well, no matter what the coach asked you to do, you didn't do it.
Because he did ask you to miss all your threes?
No. That's on you. That's not on Rick Carlisle.
Okay, let's move on to another series, the Fall of the King, at least for this season, right? Lakers versus Suns. Suns pick it up in 6. Winning 4 to Lakers 2. Big takeaway for me was that the Suns are legit, and CP3 seems to have gotten over that shoulder injury and is healthy, which is huge because that was a huge question mark for them even if they got out of this series. And Booker's is advertised. And last but not least, Ayton is having a house-breaking party. Not house-warming party, house-breaking party in the playoffs, and is living up to all of his draft hype.
I am very happy you finally joined the hype train on the Phoenix Suns. The only thing I would say that is new for me is DeAndre Ayton. He did not play like this in the regular season. I watched more Phoenix games this year than I have in a long time. And that's the biggest takeaway. I'm happy CP3's healthy. When he got hurt, I was like, man, this man is cursed. So I'm happy that he was able to recover quickly. The playoffs will be better with him. I'm gonna go ahead and pick them in the next series as well.
Over the Nuggets.
Absolutely. I'll take him right now.
Okay.
I did warn you before. I've warned you all year, and coming into the playoffs, the Suns were legit.
You said
the Lakers were vulnerable.
You said the Suns would beat the Lakers before they were even matched up, when we were just like, hypothetically, if the Lakers ended up getting out the first playing game, right? You're like, oh yeah, the Suns would beat them. So I'm with you. You've been on the Suns hype train for quite a long time. You even thought at one point they would sneak the first seed. I'm with you. Let's move on to the actual first seed. Utah Jazz versus the Memphis Grizzlies. Utah wins in 5. Every game that Donovan Mitchell played, my only takeaway was that Memphis is for real. They're young. They have a good core, and we should look out for them down the line because Ja Morant is a dog.
Ja Morant was on his Grizzly because he wanted all the smoke. There were a couple times where Morant tried to dunk over Gobert, and he got blocked, but we were like the audacity to even attempt it.
He tried every opportunity. He wanted to dunk that man into Middle Earth. And each time he went up with the intention to end Rudy Gobert, and I loved it.
No, it was great. I have great respect for Ja Morant. I think he and what he's doing there will hopefully keep that team relevant, and he'll be a big part of what the league looks like in the next decade.
All right. The other one that created some big changes for the league, Blazers versus Nuggets. Nuggets take it in 6, right? Man, the Blazers have to retool, right?
Yeah, it's clear at this point the core they have is not going to get it done. Nurkic is not good enough to be a 2 or 3 on a championship team. He's not.
Oh my God. Okay, look. I've had this conversation with 3 different people this week. We're just like to rebuild the Blazers, you need to get rid of Nurk and CJ because they're your best trade pieces. And I'm like, not Nurk. Because Nurk was the only good defensive player on the Blazers. Like the Blazers' defensive rating with Nurk playing versus when Nurk was hurt or just not in the game is vastly different. If you're like, Nurk can't be the 3rd best player on a championship team, that may or may not be true. But Portland's issue has consistently been defense. We can agree on that, right? Nurk is their best part of their defense. So I'm just like, hold on to Nurk for dear life because you have to get so much more back to replace what he provides you on the defensive end. I agree, Jokic still put that dude in a blender all day long, consistently, but it's also like he's the MVP of the league for a reason.
No, that's the second thing I want to talk about is that some people were a little bit questioned or a little bit concerned about the Joker's ability to carry the Nuggets in the playoffs without his co-star. I thought he would do his thing, and he didn't even play that well. He didn't really do his thing, and they still won. His assist numbers were way down in this series from where they were in the regular season.
But that's part of the game plan. They wanted to make him a scorer, not a facilitator, and he took it up.
He did. He's the MVP. It's official now. As of Tuesday of this week, and very happy for him. I think it was the right MVP pick, but he did what we thought he was going to do, and that's the biggest takeaway. And people need to give him his respect and his props where it's due, because some people still aren't. They're like, oh, he only won it because so-and-so was hurt. And I'm like, no, he also had a worthy season. Like, he would have been in it if those guys were around just as well. Would he have won it? I don't know. But would he be in it, and is he deserving of it regardless of LeBron or Embiid or whoever getting hurt? Yes.
Okay, I'm with you. We got a couple. I want to do like a little quick hit on the second round of the playoffs. We haven't seen much of it yet. I'm not really super in depth on it so far because these things change so fast. But Clippers versus Jazz. Give me your one big takeaway from the first game that you saw.
Utah's the better team. With a capital T.
Okay. All right. I saw that game and I was like, the Clippers should have zero panic. That game was super close. They played really poorly and like a shot away from going to OT. I think the Clippers should steadfast, assume that Paul George won't go like 3 or 4 for 16 or whatever he did, and things will be better. Suns versus Nuggets.
I think this has got to be a coming of age for Aiden if the Suns are to win this series. He has got to play bigger than he has even thus far in the matchup against Joker in order to have Phoenix come out on top long term. Now, I think he's going to be key. I think the better he plays, the shorter the series is for Phoenix. I think Phoenix can win it in 6 if he plays well.
I actually 100% agree that Ayton is the like key factor here. Interestingly enough, he kind of played Jokic to a wash. Like Basically
His
matched his stats
defense,
in game
particularly,
one.
was fantastic in game one.
I think that's all he has to do. If he can play Jokic even 4 times, like Jesus Christ, like that would be crazy. And I think if he does that, the Suns should win every game that he's able to match Jokic or even get close to it. The funniest one so far, Nets versus the Bucks.
I'll be nice. Giannis got to show up. Game 1, he showed up. Game 2, he did not. The whole team just called in on the shift and was like, I'm not feeling too good this morning. I can't come in. And they showed they were down by 50 at some point. And the team with the former, like, I believe, 2-time MVP who has been to the conference finals, DPOY, etc. You can't be down by 50. Like, that team is too good, should be too proud to be down that much. And Brooklyn's not even at full power. They're not at full strength. That's the crazy part. I thought that Milwaukee would be more of a test for them, and they're not. And that's unfortunate because I don't know that if Philly wins in the other series, we'll talk about in a hot second, I don't know if Brooklyn's been tested enough to handle a tough defense that they're going to play, because that's what they want to do. They want to get physical, and the Nets have run over everybody so far. Are they going to be ready to be physical with Philadelphia if they get there?
I'm with you here. It sounds like Coach Bud is about to get fired. This has been a slaughter, and like I thought would happen, Philly Nets is going to be the conference finals, I assume. But the Philly Hawks series, they're at 1-1 right now, right? Look, my big takeaway is that Embiid looks really fucking good, looks really, really healthy, and that gives me a lot of faith and confidence in this Philly team.
I think the Philly team has played really well. Embiid had himself a night in their second game to tie it up 1-1. I just don't know if Embiid can do that every single night in the minutes with his injury history and because as tall as he is, as big as he is, as hurt as he has been, I don't know if he could put the team on his back every night in the playoffs without more help from some of the other players on the team. And Trae Young is no joke. He is no joke. If you let him get a hot, he is going to be a problem.
Green,
Danny Green.
God. He put a 30+ on Danny Green's head alone in game 1. Oh.
I'm not ready to say that Philly wins this series easily, or even at all. I'm not sure they do.
I am. Are you going to pick the Hawks?
I might.
What's up?
I might.
Okay. All right. I've been steadfast that Philly's coming out of the East all year, and I'm still sticking with that right now. The Nets series, I think, is going to be the most challenging one for them, and I just think that, like, Philly played really bad in game 1 and still made it close. All right. That was our takeaways from the NBA playoffs so far. We want you all to share with us what you think, what has been the most exciting series so far, and how do you think it's shaped the teams going into next season? Because I think there's going to be a big shift in the NBA coming up.
It's a Playboy affair.
All right. Let's get into the RPO Run Pass Option segment, where we like to give you the hottest storylines in sports news for the week and let you know whether we are going to run with them or pass on them. Take us away, DeMarcus.
All right. So first things first, we got to talk about the Julio Jones trade to the Titans. We have been speculating about Julio being moved for weeks now, if not months. He finally did move for like a second-round draft pick. What's your initial reaction? Run or pass?
All right, so I'm going to run. I'm going to run on wow. I'm surprised that he went for so little and such a small amount of teams were actually ever interested in really negotiating for him. It sounds like the Ravens were out as soon as they drafted Rashad Bateman, and they didn't really make any moves for it. Same with the Patriots. He went for, I want to say, a second and a fourth round pick, and they're giving back a 6th. So, like, Atlantis gave up a pick when they got rid of Julio Jones. So that's really interesting to me. I think that the Titans, while I think are a good team, Julio will be great there. it doesn't move the needle. Julio's not on a contender. The Titans are still not contenders. Their defense is just too poor. And while Julio Jones said he was all about winning, I guess he really just doesn't have control about where he gets to do that at.
No, at least here they can say they gave him a chance to win. Yeah, it is what it is. So, all right. So we've been hearing some recent trade rumors coming out of Portland after that series ended, and trade rumors for CJ McCollum. Run or pass, would you trade CJ? And if so, for whom or what?
Okay, I'm going to run here. I do think that the combo guard experiment in Portland is over. Like having two combo guards that are basically both ball handlers but also shooters, it's come to an end. I think that they are too small defensively. They are good together. They work well together. But the problem is when CJ isn't getting his shot off or getting going, really, he can't add a lot more to the team, especially defensively and in the other aspects of the game and the way that he impacts it. And I think that it might actually benefit CJ a lot to be somewhere where he becomes the primary ball handler and Dame gets someone off of him that's more of a spot up guy, plays a lot of defense, can guard the best guard or wing on the other team.
So Klay Thompson.
I mean, that would be ideal. Like, there's the reason why Steph and Klay do so well together, right? Like, Klay Thompson would be the ideal, but they're never gonna get Klay. Just like, just like Dane has been wanting Draymond Green for years.
There we go. Well, that's more likely. That's much more likely to happen.
But he's been wanting Draymond for years, and you get why. Because Draymond would set the screens, grab the rebounds, can facilitate and pass, even though he can't score, but he can affect the game in the ways that really Dame does not.
Yeah, we'll have to get into this more in depth, probably sometime this summer, to figure out what is the fire out on the Portland Trailblazers. How do they fix their team? How do they become the team that Dame deserves, really? He's too good to be on a mediocre team. All right, and then last but not least, we're going to talk about your Bears and a former NBA MVP in Tim Duncan. So the story is that Tim Duncan delayed a team flight in order to watch the end of a Bears game. What's your reaction to this? Run or pass?
So this has actually been kind of floating around for a while, but just not getting enough attention. Like Tim Duncan is one of the biggest Bears fans out there. The Seahawks Bears game went into OT and he delayed the team flight to be able to see it. His ringtone is actually Bear Down, and in his locker, he kept the Bears mini helmet and box in his locker the whole time that he played. And this is like insane to me because like we don't know all that much about Tim Duncan. He's usually a really quiet guy. He's not super outward and sharing a bunch or like on social media all the time. And you got to wonder. So I did a bunch of deep digging on how like Tim Duncan became a huge Bears fan. And you got to think about it. Tim Duncan's like 40 something years old, right? Oh, like almost like approaching 50 at some point. And you got to think about it. He was like a kid when the Bears were like super good. Like won the Super Bowl in 1986, and while he was in the Virgin Islands, for some reason, they got Bears games.
You know, this is also a thing we don't think about, so maybe this is a factor. I don't know. So, you know, we always see as soon as the game's over, championship game, teams are wearing the shirts and the hats, right? Well, all the shirts and the hats from the losing team always go to some other country outside the U.S. So is it possible that little Timmy would have gotten some Bears gear if they lost the NFC Championship game or Super Bowl or something?
Oh, that is something that I would really want to know. But it's kind of amazing. Like Tim Duncan, huge Bears fan. I wonder what he thinks about Justin Fields.
Would never have guessed it.
All right, let's move on. Speaking of MVPs, right? The MVP voting came out. Jokic wins by a landslide. But a particular player got one first place vote that surprised a lot of people. And that was Derrick Rose, who apparently won the fan vote for MVP. Run or pass on Derrick Rose deserving that first place vote?
I'm going to run. I love D Rose. His story is great. How he has reinvented himself in his game after a couple of huge injuries. He kind of redefined who he was as a player. Fantastic, love him, all that. He didn't have any business getting an MVP vote here. The fans are tripping, they're crazy, and they were not watching all of the games. Maybe they're just watching D Rose play. But their vote should have gone to Steph Curry. Steph Curry got the second most first place votes. It wasn't close to the Joker, but he got 5, which tells me I'm not crazy when I look at Steph Curry play and I'm like, oh, that man is dangerously important to both the Warriors and the league. Because remember, last year he didn't play and it had a different vibe.
I mean, they got to pick Wiseman.
Well, they got to pick Wiseman, exactly. That a top 3 pick, and he just changes things in a way that no one else really does. I think possibly one of the most influential players still in the game, and definitely the most important player on the Warriors, because they get nowhere near the playoffs if he is not there. I think the Knicks might have slipped. They would have gotten in the East anyways, I think, without D Rose. Maybe a lot lower of a seed, but I think they get in. And if that's the case, then Steph got to be the fan MVP and not D Rose. That should be the question fans ask themselves. So fans are being ridiculous, as usual.
Okay. Let's talk about Coach K, right? Duke legend. He is retiring. Run or pass on him making the transition to the NBA?
Ooh, I'm gonna run. I don't know, because if he wanted to do that, why hasn't it happened already? There have been plenty of people who've called Coach K who've wanted him to come to the NBA. He's gotten some pretty solid offers for kind of setups or teams and players, and he's turned it down many, many times. I think ultimately this is going to be good for college basketball in the long term. I think the less of the big, huge kind of coaches you have, the more room that leaves for other smaller programs to get good players and or players at all, as well as kind of balances the playing field and lets some oxygen into the conferences where those coaches are. Imagine if you're playing in a conference or you're in a tournament where you got a Coach K and a Coach Tom Izzo and you've got a Coach Williams and a Rick Pitino, and you got all these guys. The new guys don't get as much shine, they don't get as much credit, and it's harder for them to overcome. And I think making way for the new generation is always a good thing.
All right, so the last thing I want to talk about here is some COVID and concussion news. Apparently, NFL assistant coaches from at least 4 different teams have refused to become vaccinated as in line with the league mandate, and they are going to lose Tier 1 access to their team. Tier 1 being like they are banned from being on the field, going to games, being in meeting rooms, having any direct interaction with players. Do you think that this is going to become a larger issue? Run or pass?
I'm going to run, and yes, it will be once the season starts. There is a low rate of vaccination among players currently, so that once we return to training camp and team facilities and having games, the rate of vaccination is going to be very low in the NFL compared to the general public. And so, it's going to have an increased risk of spreading COVID and having more games missed by star players, possibly from coaches infecting them with COVID. Imagine if I have another game where their team has no quarterbacks because the quarterback's coach didn't want to get vaccinated. I would also love to know what coaches this is. Are there any head coaches who are going to be impacted by this, who will refuse to get vaccinated, who won't be able to be on the sidelines? Because then we will know who it is very, very soon.
All right. That was your run pass option.
What's up, Playboy?
All right, we are going to get into our predictions for the NFC West. One of the most competitive divisions in football, especially over the last couple of years. And I want to kick us off with the Los Angeles Rams. All right, I had this team going 11-6. Where'd you have them at, DeMarcus?
So, I think I have the Rams somewhere in there. I think they did lose some talent on offense, but ultimately gained a better quarterback in Matthew Stafford. The question is always how he looks, how healthy Stafford is. He usually plays a lot of games, but he plays some games nicked up. I think if he's healthy all season, 11-6 is certainly achievable for them, given their schedule this year.
All right, I was actually kind of interested in this. So they have a really soft schedule. Like the NFC West has some soft schedules in general, but they get the Colts very early before they can gel, the Giants, the Lions, the Texans in a row, and they play the Jaguars and the Vikings. I feel like right there, that's about 6 wins that you can just book them for.
Well, the AFC South, which is where the Texans, Titans, Dolphins all play, etc. That is a pretty rough division right now, especially the Titans and the Colts. What's going on there in their respective situations, and so that is why this division already has really good teams. They're going to have some kind of inflated records this year, even more because they play the AFC South.
All right. That is a big thing to keep up because I didn't even have the Rams sweeping any divisional opponents. So we'll move on down to where I want to talk about where you have the 49ers at because I'm interested in this one.
So the 49ers are a bit of a conundrum. I think with Jimmy G, I think he's going to play this entire year. I think they're going to be a really good team without all the injuries from last year. I think they go 12-5. I have them winning this division. I have them with losses at Arizona versus Indy, at Seattle, at Tennessee, and at the Rams. And that's it. And I think the rest of the games, the 49ers are very capable of winning, and I think they will win them.
All right. I also had the 12-5 actually exactly. They did have a couple early injuries. 2 players got injured in training camp and are out for the season already. I want to say one tore an Achilles and the other one has another season-ending injury already. But they do have Detroit, Philly, the Jags, the Bengals, the Falcons, the Texans, and the Vikings on their schedule. So that's even more than the Rams in far of like weak strength of schedule that they have going on over there. I had them taking some surprisingly L's. I have them losing to the Bears week 8, even though you do not. But I have some faith in us on that one. But you know, they end the season on a losing streak in my prediction. I'm gonna move on to the Cardinals. The Cardinals I have as a 9-8 team, and I think that means the Cardinals will miss the playoffs yet again, even though they have a lot of shiny new pieces. They added some wide receiver talent, but their kind of wide receiver talent we haven't seen be very successful in recent memory, even though they have D-Hop. And D-Hop in and of himself is a monster, and their defense seems to be a lot improved. But this is a season with how consistent we think Kyler can be. And I think that the floor for this team should be 8 wins with a much improved roster. But I think they'll take a loss week 1 to the Titans, a loss to the Rams in week 4, a loss to the San Francisco 49ers in week 5, and the Cleveland Browns in week 6. From there, I think they'll go on a little bit of a win streak, but lose to the 49ers. Away at the 49ers on week 9. I also have them taking a loss to the Bears on week 13, and then a loss to the Colts and a loss to the Seahawks.
Okay. Right. I think Arizona's biggest problem is the division they're in. It's going to be rough for them to make the playoffs based on the way they're slotted, and they're likely to be the 4th team in the division and still have a winning record, which is crazy.
They also might have the hardest schedule in the division.
Also a thing. So we got to talk about the guy up west in the Northwest. The man who cooks, Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks. And I have them going 11-6 and finishing 2nd in this division. I have them with a couple of surprising losses, but I had them with a loss at San Francisco, at Tennessee, at Pittsburgh, at Green Bay, at the Rams, and at Arizona. So all their losses come on the road. With the crowd back, the 12th man back in the stadium up in Seattle, they win all their home games, go 11-6, 2nd in this division, and make the playoffs again.
All right, I had them going 10-7. That's only 1 game off. I have them taking an L to the Washington football team.
Oh, that's what it is. Yeah.
They're at Washington. It's
the football team, as they call themselves, are going to be good. The question is quarterback play. I'm not sure they'll get consistent enough quarterback play to be able to beat this team late.
Oh, that is interesting. We'll see if Russ continues to cook throughout the season, unlike last season where he kind of took a little bit of a nosedive in the mid.
Well, one kind of thing that's going to be a factor in this record is the relationship between Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll. We heard a lot of this offseason about the fracture in that relationship, particularly on how the offense is run. And if they don't get that resolved and there is a problem there, 11-6 is their ceiling, and their floor is much, much lower.
All right. I'm with you. Those are our predictions for the NFC West.
Y'all is Tony Playboy.
All right, it's time for the final segment of our show, the heart of our show, Ballers Bouquets. Too often in the media, people only want to focus on the negative and salacious things athletes do and never want to give them their credit where credit is due. Here, we like to make a change.
For this week's Ballers Bouquet, we're going down to the Georgia area. We're going to join a former NBA star, a current NBA analysis for TNT, and by nature of that, an Atlanta resident, because TNT is in Atlanta, by the way. And we're going to talk about Shaquille O'Neal. So Shaq has been known to be a very nice big man, very kind of big cuddly bear, will give everybody the shirt off his back, etc. And he particularly loves to do things for kids, nice things. For example, I don't know, Anthony, you remember the Shaq shoe line people used to wear? Or still wear.
I had a pair of Shaqs.
Yes,
I didn't wear them like that because I had a pair of Shaqs, but I had a pair of Shaqs.
Listen. People make fun of the Shaqs people picked up from Walmart, but in reality, we should not do that. First off, we shouldn't shame people for not being able to afford Jordans.
I had a pair of Shaqs.
Too much money. Now, Shaqs particularly were made to be affordable, though. They were made to be affordable. They were sold with Walmart in particular to be affordable so that more kind of impoverished kids who maybe wanted to hoop could have something decent to hoop in. And so this has always been Shaq's mission. This is in everything that he has done. And as a result, he has some new actions involving giving away shoes to kids. And that is why he is this week's recipient of our Ballers Bouquet. All right. So a couple of weeks ago, Shaq visited students at the Wesley Lakes Elementary School in Georgia. He said, quote, "It's all about the kids. The two things that really hurt me this year were seeing 40 million people out of work. I hate seeing kids who don't have what they need." So, of course, Shaq partnered with an organization called Souls for Souls. And I want to make very clear on how this is spelled. So it's souls, like shoe soles, like SOLES. For souls, SOULS, like, you know, my soul. So Souls for Souls. And so with the partnership between Souls for Souls and the Shaq Foundation and his partner Reebok, they were able to distribute 500 pairs of new shoes to students at the Wesley Lakes Elementary School. And they're also going to donate more shoes to other students and children in the area. But this, of course, is not even the only example of Shaq doing something kind in this county, like literally in this county. So earlier last year or late last year, and this is Henry County, Georgia, Shaq partnered with another foundation and his corporate partners to help hold a toy drive. And they gave toys to kids who didn't have around the holidays, which I imagine in 2020 was a lot more than maybe even normal because of the huge economic impact that COVID had on our economy. But as we always say here on the Ballers Bouquet, wait, there's more. Additionally, Shaq also was able to host a fundraiser and make donations through his foundation to athletic programs around the country, including in Georgia, where 6 schools received funds in order to pay for PPE and other necessary equipment in order for them to be able to travel to and play their athletic schedule. Shaq on this said, quote, "For student athletes, sports are a vital physical, mental, and social outlet, and it's devastating to have something that fundamental taken away. We know how crucial athletes are, which is why we are so honored for the opportunity to work with Icy Hot and give back to schools and students."
Pause. This nigga will never turn down an opportunity to plug Icy Hot.
But this is why they help pay for this.
Okay, look. All I'm saying is, don't nobody work like Shaq work. Don't nobody hustle like Shaq hustle. Shaq on Papa John. Shaq on Icy Hot. Shaq probably selling sodas.
Don't forget about the general.
Shaq selling car insurance. Like, don't nobody hustle like Shaq, and don't nobody shoehorn all of his hustles at every opportunity like Shaq does. It's like, oh, your back hurting? You ain't use that Icy Hot.
I mean, he does it on TNT too, so I can't blame him. But he went on to say after that I really feel for all the kids who have had to cope with the challenge on top of the stress and isolation caused by the coronavirus pandemic, which is why I wanted to do something to help. So Shaq, of course, went out of his way to do something to help. You know that we here on the Fly Route podcast love the kids. Again, we promoted tons and tons of different charities and foundations for you to go out and help. But honestly, next time you see a kid, just be nice to them. Honestly, that might be all the hope and care that we need in this world. Ask them how they are doing and actually listen to them. I don't know. These are simple suggestions to help make the world a little bit better place. But that is this week's Ballers Bouquet. Make sure you go out and support your local student athletes. Go to the games, buy some tickets, whatever.
Y'all is Tony Playboy.
All right. That is it for episode 38 of the Fly Route podcast. As always, we want to thank each and every single one of you, our Spotify listeners, Apple listeners, YouTube watchers, wherever you're listening to podcasts or getting to see our content. We just want to say we appreciate all of you, and we can't wait to see y'all again next Friday. And most importantly, we've been loving all of the segment ideas and things that you all want to hear about, that you all have been messaging us with. We can't wait to get into all of that and have some more guests on the Fly Route podcast. That was our first guest ever, Phil D. Like day one for some of us here, and like we are looking forward to getting more guests on the show, hearing more people's perspectives, and trying to create a community here.
More importantly, if you somehow found us on YouTube, make sure to leave your hot takes on what's going to happen, whether it be in the NBA playoffs, the NFC West predictions, or was the Julio Jones trade a good idea? Let us know down in the comments. We'll see you next Friday.
The Fly Route Pod. The Fly Route Pod. The Fly Route Pod. The Fly Route Pod.
We want to thank you all for taking the time out of your day to listen to this video. Did you know that this video is part of a larger Fly Route podcast? Look us up wherever you watch podcasts. We are on Spotify, Apple Music, everywhere. Take the time, subscribe. We appreciate you.
While we have you here, don't forget to like this video and hit that subscribe button. And while you're at it, don't forget to hit the notification bell. Otherwise, you will miss some of our YouTube videos. That's just the way YouTube works. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at the Fly Route Pod.